Hi, everyone. My name's Kristin Snowden. I'm going to apologize in advance because we have some housework going on behind me and I cannot connect my earbuds. But I am a licensed therapist in the state of California and a life coach. And these are webinars that are devoted to all things related to relationships, how to relate to people, what to do when there's a crisis, put a language to what's going on when there's a crisis, how to navigate crises, what different types of crises pop up because of our childhood wounds or our addiction issues, or what happens when we love people with addiction issues or trauma and childhood wounds. And today we are going to talk about what does recovery look like? So many of you who are chiming in, you are in some kind of relationship crisis right here, right now, or maybe you're slowly walking out of the crisis state, the triage state, and getting help and support. And the question always comes up, how do I know that we as a couple are moving towards a recovery state? What does that look like? And how do I know that my partner who might have been cheating, where there was infidelity, had addiction issues around sexual acting out, substance use, etc., or problematic porn use, things like that, or maybe even just rage issues, a lack of inability of productively expressing and explaining their emotions. How do I know? What are the signs that we or he or she are moving into a state of recovery? So today we're just going to be kind of talking about those. And also I have a feeling that Scott and I can have a pretty good discussion about what we've seen in our own experiences, whether we're in the room seeing people move from just doing to new states of being, and what I see in my clinical practice. So let's get this main part out of the way. Expect at first when your partner gets caught or something blows up in their life that signifies that they have a problem, expect that when they go into a recovery program, that might look like attending AA meetings or some kind of 12-step meetings, going to therapy, going to some kind of support groups, admitting that there's some kind of problem going on in their life. Expect them to first do it to just avoid consequences, because they got caught, because stuff stopped working for them. And I was trying to think of a time where someone actually just came to me or started attending meetings because they realized on their own recognizance, like in their own state, that things just weren't working for them. And I couldn't really come up with one. So meaning it's usually a relational, a legal, some kind of environmental consequence that triggers them to say, oh no, things are out of control, something needs to change. And so often when they get into the recovery state or stage, it's just to avoid that consequence, to appease people, to get everybody off their back. And I want to say that's okay. We can work with that. We can start with that. That's a great starting spot. I can always work off of the material of like, well, obviously everything's not working for you because this is going on, or this happened, or these people are mad at you, or you lost this job. And we can work off the consequences to ignite more deeper, meaningful change. And so let me start with, as Scott mentioned, he and I wrote this book called Life Anonymous, and we talk about how the 12 steps that were originated in Alcoholics Anonymous are very classical themes, that you don't just need to be struggling with an addiction to benefit from the classical themes of 12 steps. And so Scott writes from his perspective of how he sought change and gained recovery and a new life from working the 12 steps as an addict. And then I talk about it as I worked it as not identifying that I have a very specific addict problem, but how I can apply those themes to my life in general. And in those 12 steps, after you get to step 9, there's a section in the book, the big book, that talks about what they call the promises. And it says the following, that if you, essentially, if you working these if you work this program, if we're painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God, or our higher power, is doing for us what we cannot do for ourselves. So that is kind of what I feel like the big book's way of saying what you can expect to feel or experience, or how you can experience like a framework shift and a life change to show up in your life. But I'm going to talk about right now kind of bullet points of, in my years, I have over a decade of working with addicts, with betrayed partners, helping them walk through crisis and try to get to the other side, with or without their partner, or with or without their marriage intact. And these are just the things that I see to be signs for changes, signs that are good signs that they are in recovery. Because betrayed partners always ask, I know they're going to meetings, or I know they're going to therapy, but how do I know if it's genuine? How do I know if it's real? So let's talk about that. First and foremost, we always see behavioral changes. And Scott and I have talked about that a lot in the book, or just in general, that I think behavioral changes often precede soul changes. You have to kind of act first, and that will help to rewire your brain, gain new perspectives, change bad habits or old habits, and replace them with better ones. So that's okay to have behavioral changes first. And those behavioral changes tend to look like consistent attendance in some kind of support group, AA meetings, etc., active participation in therapy, sustaining some level of sobriety with their acting out problems or their substance abuse issues, and or shorter stints of relapses, shorter periods of time of backtracking and having relapses or slips. Interaction with the people in their recovery groups, their support groups. They're texting them, they're getting phone numbers, they're meeting up with them for lunch, they're doing activities, they're getting a sponsor, they're talking to the sponsor, they're working the steps. These are behaviors. Healthy replacement activities. So instead of going to the bar, I'm going to go to the gym. Instead of, going on the internet to scroll for women or porn or something like that, I'm going to read a book or go to a meeting or something like that, or talk to my therapist or talk to my sponsor. When I'm really, really angry, instead I'm going to go for a walk or meditate, something like that. So behavior changes. Another behavior change is that they require less reminders to get the stuff done that they're supposed to get done. A lot of betrayed partners get frustrated that they have to remind them to call their sponsor, remind them to attend the meetings, remind them that a disclosure is coming up and they need to start answering those questions, remind them, of just various things. They don't have to be babysat as much as they used to. Making and keeping promises and commitments. Remember, people who are struggling with addiction, they don't like relationships. They don't want to have intimacy. They want to keep everyone, they have an intimacy disorder. They want to keep everybody here. That way, I'm not exposing myself to vulnerability, hurt, and harm. And I don't have to deal with the yuckiness of the fact that I might fall short of someone else's expectations, hurt, harm, etc. So, if I never make commitments and promises, then I don't ever have expectations for you to be angry with me on, if you don't expect anything from me, then you won't be disappointed. And so it's a really big deal to start making and keeping promises and commitments. I'm going to be home at this time. I will make the commitment to pick the kids up every day at this time. We can do daily check-ins at this time together. I'm going to go to this meeting consistently with this group of guys or girls at this time. Another behavioral change is they start being willing to do uncomfortable things, like all the things I just listed before. Going to those meetings where they might not know people, or, those people are really sick, but I'm going to go to this meeting. I don't have a problem, but fine, I'll go to the meeting. And whatever. But that's very, very vulnerable and uncomfortable to go to a meeting where you don't know anybody, or take a number, or ask a sponsor to sponsor you. These are all behaviors, but nonetheless, they precede soul changes. Making friends with people who are those, weirdos in the AA meetings or the SAA meetings, but wow, gee, they're actually humans and just people just like me and suffer and struggle just like me. That all happens when you start being willing to do uncomfortable things and doing uncomfortable things with other people, sharing things, etc. Talking about uncomfortable things, going to lengths to help the partner, your betrayed partner, feel safe. Emoting, that's deeply uncomfortable. That is doing uncomfortable things. And lastly, a behavior change that I like to see are addicts or people who have cheated or struggling with substance use issues do esteemable acts. Now, I can't define for you what helps you build esteem within yourself. That's kind of just within yourself. Sometimes it can be rebuilding a car engine, and that really just helps you feel like you did something really tangible. You got your hands dirty. It might be going back to church and developing a spiritual practice. It might be spending more time with your family, coaching a team, donating money to charity. I don't know what that is, because you are your own person and you know what feels good. Like, I am doing good things. I'm making good choices. I am contributing to society. I am doing something of value to others. But I like seeing that an addict in recovery is doing esteemable acts, because as you can imagine, the lying, the cheating, the hurting really doesn't serve that voice in their head telling them that they're a good human. And so they need to do esteemable acts to kind of help counter those shame voices. And it can really help, again, ignite soul changes. So speaking of soul changes, let's start talking about the things that I see in addicts when I see that kind of switch in them, where they move from kind of checking things off the box. I'm doing everything you want me to do. What more do you want from me? When are you going to get over this? Yeah, I went to that meeting or that therapist and it just didn't work for me. It's just not for me. I tried that workshop. Yeah, I didn't like it that much. It was whatever. I did it because she told me. So when I see that shift in them, where actually there is an internal change in the way they view the world, way they view themselves, their ability to kind of hang out in the discomfort and the messiness of humanity. So first, I start seeing an increased tolerance for confronting messy feelings within themselves. They might not quite be able to handle what they did to others and sit with someone else's hurt and pain and anger, but they might be able to start off with like, yeah, I realized I didn't feel loved by my dad, or I was really always constantly trying to perform to get his validation and I didn't, or I was just always told, don't cry, toughen up, just perform. Those are messy feelings. And that's a really good sign when I start seeing that, rather than like, my life is perfect, I don't know what you want from me. moving on. Other people, those other weirdos in the room have messed up lives. I had a perfect life. Things like that. I look for that. Empathy and compassion. Holy moly. Empathy and compassion are really hard for addicts. Empathy and compassion are learning how to identify and practice these things in their life daily. So it's a literal like framework shift. It's where you kind of just, instead of seeing, oh my gosh, she's never going to get over it, or, oh man, my boss has it out to get me, or gosh, everybody is just so messed up and the world's so awful. It's a framework shift where suddenly they have empathy, which is the ability to feel with someone. I see that you're sad. I see that you're hurt. I see that you're angry, and they can hold space for that. I can sit with someone's anger because I'm not taking it on and absorbing it, because I've kind of done the work to know what's theirs and what's mine. And then compassion is the daily practice of recognizing and accepting that humans are imperfect, that we suffer, that we struggle, that no one's better or worse than the other one, that people are, doing the best that they can, but you also need to acknowledge other people's emotional and physical limitations and set boundaries around that. It's a daily practice of empathy and compassion. It's not hard to do. Non-addict people struggle with it. So, if you suffer in addiction as well, it's even harder. Another thing I look for is someone feeling, through all those behavioral changes that they've been doing, changing, replacing unhealthy behaviors with healthy behaviors, talking to friends or people in recovery or sponsors or therapists about messy emotions, that they might start regaining a sense of agency over their life. You have to remember that their addictive behavior, that affair that they had, or the pornography use, or the substance was their best coping skill, their best thinking at the time of how to escape, distract, numb, get out of the blah that their body was experiencing. And so I really look for them to start acknowledging the blah, but then also feeling like I have some agency over the blah, the yuckiness, the guilt, the shame, the trauma, the hurt, the vulnerability, the rawness of life, that they don't need to run from it. It's not their enemy. And experience some agency around it. Like, I can make healthier choices. My trauma does not define me. The bad stuff I have done in the past is not me. And that there's again, it goes with the esteemable acts, that I can separate out the bad choices I've made from the fact that I do want to be a good human. I am valuable. I am lovable, etc. Like that. Messiness of emotion. I like to see them get angry. I like to see them get fed up. I like to say, this isn't fair. How much longer do I have to do this? Because again, that's just all acknowledging that they're sitting in their messiness, that they're feeling like this isn't fair. They're feeling frustrated. They're feeling like they're never going to climb themselves out of the hole. I can work with that. I can't work with complete denial and justification. I can work with someone feeling complete shame, feeling like they're never going to dig themselves out of the hole that they created for themselves. We can work our way out of that, because then you can validate those emotions, process them, and develop healthier coping skills to slowly build their way out of it and develop that agency. I like to see addicts start eventually being able to hold space for their partner's messy emotions or their family's messy emotions. I like to see them be able to separate out, and this is like master ninja skills. She's sad, and rather than I did this to her, I'm bad, right? I can hold space and say, she's angry. There were things that I have done. There were choices that I made that has made her feel extremely angry. It is not, her anger is not evidence that I'm a horrible human being. She's a person right? I'm practicing empathy and compassion. She's a person who's suffering and struggling. How can I help her feel safe? Because she's my partner. Again, master ninja skills, non-addicts struggle with this behavior, with these kind of reactions, but that's what I like to see. The absence of, another thing about holding space for the betrayed partner's messy emotions is that the addict knows to go to their therapist or recovery partners for the attaboys. And yeah, you got 30 days sober, or you got 6 months sober, because they know I've been doing this to my partner for years and years and years. 45 days of sobriety does not equal he or she's totally stable and happy and everything's good to go. I can get the attaboys from my little cheerleading crowd over here. Right now, my partner's very angry, very hurt, as he or she should be. And I need to hold space for that. There's an absence of blame shifting. So one of my favorite little communication things that I try to remember is there's an ability to listen, to understand what someone's going through, not to respond or defend it. So, I don't watch porn for 3 hours a day because our marriage sucks. Those are two separate issues. I always have choices. I have agency. I have an ability to make healthy choices around my uncomfortable experiences or feelings or trauma or my frustrations with you. But I choose to do things that are outside my value system, outside my integrity. And I also lie and sneak around and hide those behaviors, and I don't want anyone to know about them, right? So I don't blame shift. I don't say, your anger gives me the right to do X, Y, and Z, or your nagging, is why I do X, Y, and Z. It's not blame shifting. We're holding space for what another person's experience is. Why are you nagging so much? Why do you have so much anger? Well, I don't trust you. Well, you keep doing these things. You're not following through with commitments, etc. I like to see more constructive communication that would come from ability to sit with these messy emotions, right? When you do X, Y, and Z, the story I tell myself is X, Y, and Z. It's a little bit on the behavior side, but I really think that you can't have constructive communication or be present with someone's uncomfortable conversations unless you have a soul change where you're not willing to take their stuff on as I'm bad, I'm wrong, I need to defend myself. And I can just do more of like, all right, my job's to listen. This is my partner. How can I help that person feel safe? I'm not responsible for them feeling safe, but I can certainly take feedback in and I can help create a level of safety. And there's also an accountability and responsibility in everything that they do, there's an understanding, a past and a present understanding of guilt versus shame, right? It's this guilt is I have the ability to make bad choices. Shame is I am a bad person. I am just inherently flawed and that makes me worthless or valueless. Guilt, if I focus in on the guilt, how I could have made better choices, how I could have showed up differently, how I could use better coping skills, that allows me to stay more accountable and responsible for my side, right? We hear a lot in the rooms, the keeping my side of the street clean. And to finish, the number one sign that I see when there's a significant shift in someone in recovery is this humbleness and surrender that kind of takes over. I've had clients where, they're going to a bunch of meetings, they're going to a bunch of therapists, I'm saying, oh, well, try neurofeedback. They try neurofeedback. Oh, try this trauma therapist. Oh, try this sober coach. And they are dipping their toe in every one of those things, right? They're doing behaviorally all these things, but there's no follow through. There's always like, I'm on the outside looking in. There's no connection with those people. There's just a lack of humbleness. And what it is this, I think Kevin McCauley makes a really explains this beautifully, which is that addicts have a reward system disorder. They always overemphasize the reward of doing their unhealthy coping skills, their unhealthy behavior, their addict behavior, and underemphasize the consequences of what's going to happen, the bad stuff that comes out of their behaviors and choices, the lying, the sneaking around, etc. And so there has to be this kind of coming to terms with the fact that I don't make good choices, at least at first. When I'm attempting to come up with the idea of what's the next right thing, my first, second, and third choice don't really make sense to the average person. So I might think this might not work. I might think this is a waste of my time. I might think I don't connect with these people. I might think this therapist is crazy and I'm tired of her. I might think my spouse just sucks my soul dry and that's why I do all these things. But the truth is I can kind of write up on the board all the really messed up, insane choices I have made. And I can see that I need help. And obviously those are steps 1, 2, and 3 from the 12 steps. It's saying that I need to live in consultation with people who suffer and struggle in similar ways, or just know how to call me out on my stuff. And even though inside me, I'm like, this sounds stupid. Oh, this sounds worthless. Oh, I don't get this. I need to err on the fact that I have a long history of bad choices. And I need to humble myself, right size myself, as Scott says, and invite other people's feedback and influence into my life to try to make the next right choice. And that is it. Oh, I will finish by saying I do have a few spots left in both. I have a Betrayed Partners group and a My Daring Way, Brene Brown, shame and vulnerability and trust building workshops. They start mid-April. So if you go to kristinsnowden.com, there's a few spots left in each of those workshops.
Thank you, Kristin. I have done the Brene Brown vulnerability and shame work. I highly recommend it. If you haven't done that, I'm not a Betrayed Partner, so I can, but I know Kristin's great with Betrayed Partners. Highly recommended. I love this topic, Kristin. I teach a lot of our online work groups. I mostly work directly with the addicts, and I want to get the body in the door, and then we start working on the mind. Bring the body, the mind will follow, and then the heart will follow eventually. And this is sort of the behavioral change to the soul change that you're talking about. The first couple of weeks when I get somebody, we're talking about their consequences and we're talking about their denial. We're just trying to get them to wrap their head around the fact that their behavior has been a little crazy, or a lot crazy sometimes. Goes against their values. It's ruining a relationship that they love. It's hurting people that they care about, because addicts don't get that in the moment. So we get the mind to come along, and then as the work groups progress, and we have 3 parts to our sex addiction work group, for example, every once in a while I revisit goals. I'll say, why are you here? In the beginning, I'll say, why are you here? First thing we do in the first class, why are you here? What do you want? Well, I want my wife to stop yelling at me. I want to stay married. I want my consequences to go away. And as we progress, the goals start to change. They start to be, I want to be present in my relationship. They talk about, I was at my kid's game, but I really wasn't there. I was in my head fantasizing, or, we went on this trip, but I was thinking about something else. They say, I want to be present. I want to be honest. I want to have some integrity. I want to stop the double life, because addicts, we live a double life. I want to feel connected. And this is when I know we're getting somewhere. I want to feel connected. And that involves things like empathy and compassion. I want to live my life. I want to make good choices. That's when they realize, oh, I have choices, and I made a bunch of bad choices that hurt me and hurt the people around me. And you mentioned you're always glad when the addict starts to have emotions, when they're like, this isn't fair. The guys will tell me, I'm just doing this and this and this, and my wife still doesn't trust me. And I'm like, I'm so glad you're mad about this. I'm so glad you're having some feelings, because it is great when they have some feelings, because they have to kind of sit with them and learn to be okay with them instead of escaping. And this is massive progress for an addict. So yeah, I love this topic. So anyway, thank you. We have some, yes, Kristin just popped her workshops into the chat feature. You want to jump into the Q&A, or do you have anything else?
Sure. We usually, Tammy reads them, but I can read them, so that's fine.
Oh, no, I'll read them for you.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure you were ready for them. My sex addict partner works nights. He frequently falls asleep during recovery videos. I've asked about this to Scott before, LOL. But besides that, it seems like he makes time for what he wants to make time for, and then he'll put recovery last and be tired. He's consciously trying to change that, but can you please discuss how important self-care is and proper sleep all around in maintaining sobriety and getting recovery? He thinks he can operate on 6 hours of interrupted sleep.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to be preaching to the choir, but sure, let's go for it. Obviously, as they do more research, they find that sleep and enough sleep, especially when we're in a time of crisis or a time of trying to change, or even apply our change, right? So if we, like for kids, they learn all this material, but it's actually during their sleep when the change starts kind of rewiring and programming into their more long-term memory. So yeah, sometimes if we're not getting enough sleep, theoretically, we could read the book, we could read the big book, or, attend that meeting, hear something really great. But if we're not getting enough sleep, it's not going to shift into our new framework. I think, especially in these days of accessibility, they could be working or going for a walk and hearing a podcast and just getting that new framework, those different voices, those affirming type of talks that will help shift their brain. All this self-care or recovery work is so readily accessible these days, that really we can make some time for it. I'd be curious to know what he is doing for the rest of the day, and if there's time to kind of add in some of Rob's podcasts, some 12-step Zoom meetings, etc.
Yeah, it's hard to have good sleep hygiene when you work nights. But one of the things that addicts often need to do is come up with some non-negotiables. Like I have an hour a day set aside for my recovery, no matter what, and that's not negotiable. I go to bed at the same time and I get up at the same time every day. That's really not negotiable unless I've got an airplane flight that's or something screwy. But otherwise, it's not negotiable. It is something that addicts have to do, and it's something we're usually not used to. We want what we want when we want it. And that's how we go through life. And as part of recovery, we kind of have to reprioritize. So, yeah.
And it's uncomfortable, right? And
yeah.
so they're going to put off whatever is uncomfortable and choose something else. I'd rather drive in silence than listen to someone preach recovery to me on the stereo. So
yeah. Yeah. Okay, next one here. I'm holding off on boundaries for safety with my sex addict until after disclosure. I don't feel my sex addict is able to hold me or my emotions safely. The way he delivers disclosure is my cue to whether is my cue, CUEQ, to whether I stay or go. My wounds are so deep that I struggle with being triggered or abandoned by my sex addict. I can't keep setting boundaries that halt my healing. Do you think that this is normal to feel this way?
I think it's absolutely normal. There's been no sign that your partner is safe, and it would be potentially harmful to yourself to make yourself vulnerable to someone who doesn't show the emotional capacity to hold space for your messy emotions, for your anger, respect your boundaries, etc. So yeah, it's very, very common for people to really kind of lock their heart and mind up from their partner until they see signs of being humbled, being surrendered, being able to even maybe express their own vulnerability and sadness, and then they'll feel safe, or those will be signs that it's time for them to be okay.
Yeah, and betrayed partner safety is really paramount. I mean, what sort of boundaries do you suggest betrayed partners in early recovery? Because I'm assuming this is early, we haven't had disclosure yet. What sort of boundaries should they set simply to stay safe in a relationship that doesn't feel safe?
Well, there's just so many different options, right? There's the in-house separation where I just can't even sleep next to you. There's actual physical separation where we're not even talking and engaging, except for maybe you're working on your disclosure. And after the disclosure, as this person's mentioning, I'm going to see how humbled and surrendered and accurate they are in their disclosure. And that's going to give me a sign about where they are. Are they minimizing? Are they denying? Are they skirting accountability and responsibility? There's different schools of thought about doing couples work before or after that, because sometimes that's a boundary that, like, you go do 90 meetings in 90 days, you find a sponsor, you start working your steps, you go to a therapist, and then maybe we can talk about us doing couples therapy or something like that. So it also depends of what your logistical limitations are. Sometimes people don't have the funds to have two households and have separation. Maybe there's not room for in-house separation. And what level of trauma and unsafety is that person displaying? But I always encourage betrayed partners, which is why I have all these workshops, for them to always be doing their own work, have a place and space that's safe for them to candidly share about what's going on in their life, their hurt, their pain, and not needing to worry about kind of the average person around them at the PTA meeting being like, egads, why don't you leave that monster? If they're around a bunch of other betrayed partners, they can share their story and experience empathy and compassion, someone hurting and suffering and struggling with them, rather than like, ooh, that's terrible, I hope that never happens to me. So that's what I look for.
Do people say egads?
I say it. I just said it right now.
I love it. Could you please post a link to the workshops on my, Kristin had posted it, but only went to the panelists, so I reposted it for everyone. So that is in there. And you can sign up. Just click the link and it'll take you right there. In affair/betrayal recovery, I'm surrounded by triggers, places and people with whom my husband cheated cross boundaries with, people and places that I see daily. Many other people in our community know that my husband was telling people we were in an open relationship. We absolutely weren't. And they know that I was unaware that he was doing this. There are things I would like to do in my community, but the fear of being confronted with the trigger holds me back. I am completely confounded with how to hold my head up and face the world. Wow, I feel your pain.
Yeah, I am so sorry. And this is not a story different from other people. There's just so much humiliation that is involved in just any kind of substance abuse, sex addiction, pornography use, etc. And when it is spread and exposed to an entire community around you, like I said, when there's so much gaslighting and manipulation involved, you start questioning not just your partner, but just everything. How does everyone else view me? Is anyone else here telling me the truth? Is anyone else here kind of sick and distorted in their behaviors and choices the way that my partner is, or other acting out partners that were doing what he or she was doing? And so the environment can feel so unsafe. You do really have to fight to find your little community of people where you can start rewiring and rebuilding trust, and know that there are many sick people out there. There are many people who hurt people. That's a fact. But you can develop a community of people who do all those lists of things that I just, got done with, who can hold space for messy emotions, who can hold space for you to have messy emotions, who can have hard conversations. And you have to fight to find that therapist who understands that. That community. That's why sexandrelationshiphealing.com is so incredible, such a great resource. There's We Tong Lin. I have my workshops because I have this group of women who've gone and done like all 3 workshops with me, and they're going to keep going. They have their own WhatsApp group. They're going to meet Monday nights. And I love that, because you have to fight. It might not be in your immediate community, unfortunately, that you're going to find those safe people. You might, that's the beauty of the internet, is you can connect with someone who's in Tallahassee, Florida, and you're in North Dakota, and get at least some semblance of empathy, compassion, safety in that space. I also, once the crisis has calmed down, I am a big proponent of evidence-based trauma work like EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, that can really help you with these triggers of when you walk into places, hear songs, go into a place or a space, hear about that person, that can really help down-regulate that physical response. I have several videos on the various approaches to help down-regulate a traumatized body.
Yeah. Everything Kristin said times 2. I mean, yeah. My partner is practicing good recovery, and I can see and feel a lot of change. It has been 3 years of staggered disclosures. We have just completed the formal disclosure, and I have been activated and mentally offline since then. Is there an average for how long it takes for a rewiring of these trauma tapes that the amygdala is running? It's so frustrating to see my partner have such monumental change and feel stuck in our past that no longer serves me.
I hear you, and you are also not alone. It's a blessing and a curse. It's this conundrum where you actually do see your partner improve, and you want to be like, wow, thanks for fighting so hard for us, or for making these really courageous, difficult changes. They make one eyebrow lift, or they take one tone of voice, or they do one thing, you're like, you're a monster, get away from me. And that's your trauma. That's your betrayal trauma, like PTSD, where just one little thing, or even a disclosure, which is a reminder of what they are capable of being, that they might be better now, but holy moly, they are capable of doing such devastating damage. That is all strongly wired in your brain to keep you safe, not necessarily to keep you sane or to create intimacy and vulnerability with your partner in recovery. It's there to keep you safe. And again, interventions like EMDR, I know IFS, internal family systems, somatic experiencing, even some neurofeedback. There's conflicting research, but I personally see neurofeedback can be really helpful in unwiring or dampening that really strong physical reaction that you have to these traumatizing events. So it's not that you ever forget what he or she is capable of. You never forget that disclosure, but you don't get this overwhelming physical state of just like, get away, you monster. You are the devil reincarnate. It lets you hold a little bit more space to do those things that I mentioned on my list, where it's like, that person is capable of doing these things, but right now, he or she's doing X, Y, and Z to be different. These are the ways that I see differences. There's better coping skills, there's better communication, there's support systems. And that you have to be able to hit the pause button and operate in your prefrontal cortex to kind of bring all those coping skills online.
Yeah. Okay, this one's from an addict. 6 months in, doing step 5. He's done 90 and 90 out of the Doghouse group and more. 90 and 90 is 90, 12-step meetings. I can see me on the positive side of much of your checklist. Good. Last week, however, I failed to call when I said I would, and then failed to call and apologize when I realized. I'm told now that this is like starting over, and she sees 0 progress. I'm not looking for attaboys, but is perfection required as a measure for change? This is a great question.
It is. And I want to say, I'll give you an attaboy. You're here. You are sharing you're being honest and sharing, again, speaking of accountability and responsibility, where you fell short, what you could have, would have, should have done better. And hopefully the sting of that will remind you that you can do better in the future. You're doing your best, but there's room for improvement, holding space for those two dichotomies. As far as your partner goes, having a really strong response to it, hopefully the answers I was just talking about, that PTSD and that really strong physiological response that previous commenter had. Know that your partner might be coming partly from that space, right? A very like, you not calling, you not doing this thing makes me feel like I'm right back to zero again. I'm not sure if that is the absolute truth. It might be in that moment that person is extremely triggered, extremely hurtful, and that survival brain in her is just saying, see, this is proof. Don't trust this person again. Don't bring them back into your life. They're very dangerous, because that part of her brain is invested in just keeping her alive. Maybe if you continue to show more of your honesty, transparency, accountability, I want to help you feel safe. How can I make amends for what I've done? Which, by the way, you're doing it. Hopefully that will help calm her nervous system. But you are, again, on paper, step 5, over 90 meetings in 90 days, doing the men's groups, owning where you've fallen short. That's like slow clap. It does sound like you are doing all the right things. It is going to take a lot of time, though, for your partner's nervous system and trauma wiring to reset and invite in the idea that you may truly be able to be a safe person.
And this is one of those things where, I will say, I'm so glad you're having this experience because you're getting to sit with the discomfort. It's part of your recovery, and that's awesome.
Yeah, well said, Scott. Well said.
Yeah, and reaching
Hang
out.
in there. I see positives in all of this right now.
Yeah, reaching out in a safe space to us is exactly the right thing to do here. So good for you. My spouse says he is healed, and if I trust God, I will believe him. He has been sober, I think, for about 6 months. I know he's in denial, but I also know I can't help him. We have sex every 6 to 8 weeks. He says it's not enough or good enough for him. I feel obligated and judged. He says he has no responsibility for my desire. I need validation that this is not all on me.
It's not all on you. So just by definition of him being an addict, all of those behaviors, choices, reactions are just not on you. You sound like when you say, I know he is in denial and I cannot help him. I know you're typing out those words, but I hope they actually are in your soul and you accept them. I'm going to caveat that. It is very hard to connect with your instincts and intuition and know that you are right about these things, that he is in denial and that you truly cannot help him. And that even though he says he's healed and that if you were just faithful, pull the faithfulness card out to shame you into believing him, that is not what sits well for you. And so again, working in groups with other betrayed partners really helps you rekindle and reconnect with that instinct and intuition. It really helps you validate what is yours, what you need to take responsibility for, what boundaries you need to set up, what work you need to do, and separate out what is his, what is the addict's, what you are just not taking, receiving, like the obligation and the judgment, etc. He's been sober for 6 months. It's reasonable that you said, I think he's been sober 6 months. It's reasonable for you not to feel sexually intimately safe with someone who, you don't say how long he's been acting out, what he's been doing, how much gaslighting and manipulation occurred during that time period. But you are validated. But I hope you're putting yourself around other betrayed partners to really work on what is his and what is yours.
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't cause it. You can't fix it. What you can do is do what you need to do to feel safe in your relationship. Um, and I mean, do you hear gaslighting in,
Yeah.
I'm healed, and if you trusted God, you'd believe me?
Yeah.
That
It's
sounds like
pull the
gaslighting
gut.
to me.
Absolutely. I'm not hearing someone that's emotionally sober at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have resources or ideas for setting boundaries?
Scott's amazing. No, but I feel like the sex and relationship healing.com workshops are really great for those kind of things. Um, I think the AA meetings or the SA meetings are really great at, calling sponsors and them asking questions. What's mine? What's hers? How do I need, like on their end, asking those same questions. I don't know. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, go to the sex and relationship healing site, type in the word boundaries in the search feature. There's a couple of really good articles, some of them by me, some of them by other people. There's also, I believe, Matt Wheeler did one of my favorite discussions of boundaries in his webinar. So if you go onto our YouTube channel and type in Matt Wheeler and boundaries, that video should pop up. And I think you've done it.
I do. Yeah. One of my most common videos are I have a couple, I have this boundaries chart that a million people have uploaded, which is kind of what I call like the Bible for how to connect, to do boundaried connection with other people. It's kind of like has two columns and says, this is the healthy way of approaching it, and this is the unhealthy way of approaching it. So a boundaried way and an unboundaried way. And so it kind of really helps. So for that person asking, you just go to Kristin Snowden. I have free resources and like couples or addiction resources, or just type in Kristin Snowden boundaries, and that pops up too.
Yeah. Yeah. And boundaries, the healthy way to set a boundary is when you behave in this way, I feel this. And that makes me feel unsafe in our relationship. So in the future, if you do that, I will respond in this way by asking you to sleep in the other room or whatever. Healthy boundaries are about me. It's about how I am going to respond if you behave a certain way. It's not about you have to do this or else. It's about if you do this, here is how I will protect myself. It causes me to feel this, and I will protect myself in this way. That's kind of the short version of healthy boundaries.
Yeah. Brene Brown has those quick sound bites of it is what's okay and what's not okay, but clearly defining what's okay and what's not okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And boundaries are not mutually agreed upon. Boundaries are unilateral. I set my boundaries to protect me. Kristin sets her boundaries to protect her. Other people don't have a say in our boundaries.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, let's try and get one more here in. My spouse said it's okay for me to deny him sex, but I get angry if he wants to meet that. Oh, my spouse said that I think it's okay for me to deny him sex. By the way, it is. But he gets angry, but I get angry if he wants to meet that need elsewhere. Yeah, you should. He has looked at porn off and on our entire marriage. He's sober for 6 months and says he is no longer an addict. Okay. I see this as a veiled threat. Am I being too sensitive? Or is this exactly what I'm seeing? He also said I should stop listening to everyone else. Oh my God. So I stopped counseling, workshops, etc. I know he is manipulating, but find it hard to break free of it after 43 years. Well, you can tell where my head is. I'm on your side. Kristin, please help.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you have a great language for the BS that's happening because you were going to counseling and workshops. So, I hear in you this extreme cognitive dissonance. I love that parts work, the internal family system stuff. So what I hear are two battling people inside you. A part that's like, he is my partner. I have no intentions of leaving. I got to figure out a way to make this work. I'm going to cohabitate with him. So am I the crazy one? Should I listen to him and be okay with him stepping outside our marriage, stop counseling, workshops, etc.? And then this other side of you that's like, heck no, it is not okay that he's doing this. It's not okay he's saying this. I need to go listen to other people because this is pure insanity that's happening right now. And I want you to go speak those different parts out in a safe space, whether it's going to a codependence meeting, whether it's going to Wheatong Glen or to one of my workshops or to someone else's groups. But you need to speak out these parts, these conflicting parts in you. And yeah, because it's just gonna suck your soul dry.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, it is, if you don't feel safe or want to have sex with him, don't. That's number one. Number two, if he says he wants to get the need met elsewhere, feel free to get angry. And that includes pornography. Pornography is a betrayal in most relationships. Are you being too sensitive? No, absolutely not. And the fact that he's telling you to stop listening to other people is, you're right, that is manipulation, and you don't have to put up with that. You can stay in your relationship. It is okay to love somebody who is engaging in these behaviors, but you also get to set boundaries and protect yourself. And you are not off base here. If I was you, I would be feeling exactly what you're feeling. And I'm so glad you were able to get this question and hear from Kristin and me that, yeah, you're on target, and he is way off target. So yeah. Okay, we are out of time. There's a couple questions left. One of them is follow-up. So there's actually one more question. Do you want to do one more, or are we out?
Sure, I started late, so let's try.
Okay. I am deeply afraid that during this time of recovery that my husband is feeling the fallout and the shame so deeply that is making him feel resolved that he will not act out again. And during this time, he has not been going out to experience his acting out triggers. I'm not sure what's being asked here.
I'm assuming this person is saying they are afraid that so much shame will cause them to go out and act out. That's kind of what I'm assuming. I would imagine that's what I would be deeply afraid of, is that all this recovery is going to be so brutal and the shame is going to be so brutal that it will cause them, the addict, to act out and go out and act on his triggers. That's how I'm reading it.
Yeah. And this is why addicts need support from other recovering addicts and from professionals like Kristin to walk through this.
It is recovery is brutal. You are acknowledging all the harm and messed upness. And like I said, even about that humbleness and surrendering, you are owning your best thinking. Like the only thing you have to survive in this world is your brain and your framework for this world. And I'm telling you, it's messed up. You are messed up and you need help. You need to start erring on other people's feedback influence, because this thought process is no bueno right now. It doesn't mean that it can't get rewired and fixed and improved upon, but that's very, very scary and uncomfortable for someone to come to terms with that. And there is a lot of shame, but those are all things that can get rewired. There's a shame resiliency practice. There's trauma recovery systems that you can put in place. There is a way out, but you do kind of have to go through the swamp first before you can make it to land.
Yeah. And then will this video be uploaded to YouTube? Yes, it will. I will get it posted on the Sex and Relationship Healing channel this afternoon. And I think you also.
Yes, I tend to edit it to make it a little shorter, but I'm on Kristin Snowden is my channel. And I link all the resources of what we're talking about in the description.
So cool. Yes, they will be up on YouTube at least later today for me and Kristin when she gets it up on hers. Kristin, lovely to see you. I don't get to do this with you often enough. So thank you everybody for being here. Great questions, great topic. Kristin will be back in May.
Yes, every other month now.
Okay. Cool.
And you are always welcome to email me, Kristin Snowden, mft@gmail.com. Questions, concerns. I try my best to provide resources.
Cool. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kristin.
Thank you.